September 2008. David Miller is sitting at his kitchen table in Ohio looking at a mortgage statement, a grocery receipt, and his latest paycheck. The house is worth less than the mortgage attached to it. David is not a Wall Street trader. He is a middle-class homeowner. He has a job, a wife, 2 children, and a 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood where the lawns look almost identical. For years, the house had been the family's biggest financial asset. Every mortgage payment seemed to move them closer to owning it. Then the housing market changed. By 2008, more than 2 million American homes had entered the foreclosure process that year. The number of properties with foreclosure filings had risen dramatically from 2006. For families like David's, the problem was not just losing a house, it was losing the financial cushion the house was supposed to provide. A homeowner normally has an escape route when money gets tight. Sell the house, refinance the mortgage, move somewhere cheaper. But those options depend on something very simple. The house has to be worth enough. David opens a folder containing his mortgage paperwork. The balance has barely changed. The value of the house has. That difference is called negative equity. The house can still have a front door, a kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and a backyard, but on paper it can be worth less than the debt secured against it. And that changes everything. In 2007, lenders initiated roughly 1.5 million foreclosure proceedings. More than half involved subprime mortgages, even though subprime loans represented a much smaller portion of the overall mortgage market. At first, David thinks this is somebody else's problem. Maybe it is the neighbor who bought too much house. Maybe it is the family down the street with the adjustable rate mortgage. Maybe it is the people on television who borrowed money they could never afford. Then the foreclosure signs begin appearing closer to home. One house is empty, then another. A property that once sold for a certain price is suddenly listed for less. Another family moves out. Another lawn becomes overgrown. David's house has not changed. The street has. And the value of his house begins following it downward. This is where the middle-class version of the crisis becomes harder to see. David still goes to work. His children still need school supplies. The refrigerator still needs groceries. The car still needs gas. The mortgage company still expects its payment. Nothing about his daily routine looks like a financial crisis, but the balance sheet underneath that routine is changing. Then the financial system begins feeling the same pressure. Mortgages had been packaged into securities and sold to investors. When borrowers stopped paying, losses moved through the financial system. Credit tightened, and lenders became more cautious. That matters to David because the mortgage he already has is not the only financial decision he may need to make. Maybe the roof needs replacing. Maybe the family car breaks down. Maybe his employer cuts overtime. Maybe one income temporarily disappears. In a normal housing market, home equity can provide breathing room. In a collapsing housing market, the same house can become a financial trap. By November 2008, 25% of subprime mortgages were seriously delinquent. Prime mortgages were performing better, but their serious delinquency rate had also nearly doubled from the previous year. The crisis was moving beyond the borrowers who had taken the riskiest loans. That is what made it different. A foreclosure did not stop at one front door. The empty house affected the street. The falling price affected the neighbor. The losses affected the lender. The lender's losses affected credit, and tighter credit affected families who had never missed a payment. David looks around his kitchen. The house is still there. His children's drawings are still attached to the refrigerator. The mortgage statement is still on the table, but the number beside the house is no longer working in his favor. For decades, Americans had been told that owning a home was one of the foundations of middle-class financial security. In 2008, millions of families discovered the other side of that equation. A house can be a home. It can also be a debt. And when the price falls far enough, the difference can follow a family long after the foreclosure sign disappears. If you want more stories about the money decisions shaping the American middle class, subscribe. The mortgage remained.